like to repeat again that there are people joining us all the time. We've now got about 200 people. Some of the speakers, I mean, this is, I'm going to say something myself now very briefly, is that many of the speakers have suggested there's some sort of equality between Israel and Hamas and calling for a ceasefire as if they were somehow equivalent. But we should remember that Hamas offered Israel a 40-year ceasefire. We should also remember that there was a complete ceasefire adhered to by Hamas from May until November 2008. But then Hamas at that stage said that they could not continue with the ceasefire while 1.5 million people were under siege, with only 6 hours electricity a day, with no food, with no medicine, with their schools and hospitals and infrastructure being starved by the Israeli siege that has gone on now for a year and a half, because Hamas was elected democratically by the people of Palestine, and when the results of a democratic election go the wrong way, the world ignores it. Right. So I say there is no equivalence. Victory to the Palestinians. Let me just say one lie which Pete Smith overlooked, was that the Israeli state claims to be acting on behalf of all Jews, and this isn't true. On Saturday last week there was a massive demonstration through London, and there were more Jews on that demonstration from Britain and Jews demonstrating around the world against the war. 10,000 people marched through Tel Aviv, which is a predominantly Jewish city in Israel, last week against the war. And when the pro-Israeli people had a demonstration last Sunday in Hyde Park, there were barely 4,000 people on it. And a number of those were British nationalists and other far-right extremists from this country. The truth is that Israel does not represent Jewish people. It represents a colonialist project in the Middle East, and we hold out our hand in friendship to the Jewish people of the world who have the same interests of peace as we do. Thank you, Bob. There is, of course, something else which we can do, as well as lobbying our elected representatives, and that is, first of all, that we can write to the press. I'd like all of you to write letters to the Swindon Advertiser. I'd like all of you to be getting in on phone-ins on the radio to express your support for the Palestinians. There is another thing you can do at your workplaces, amongst your friends and in your communities, is to collect money for medical aid for Palestine, which is a non-political charity which does exactly what it says on the tin. It gives medical aid to Palestine. And so many heroic volunteers have been trying to get into Gaza over the last few weeks and months with small boats and ships with aid to beat the blockade and the siege of the area. So that is something very practical. I just wanted to say one more thing, and then I'm going to ask us to end with 2 minutes silence in memory and commemoration of all the victims that have died in the present conflict. And one thing is that 2 years ago, 4 of us from Swindon went to visit Palestine, to the town of Beit Fajal, where we have a sort of a friendship relationship with. And one of the most remarkable things about the Palestinian people is how tolerant and diverse they are. There is no hostility to Jews amongst the Palestinian people, although they have a lot of hostility to the Israeli state. The Palestinian people are a remarkably diverse bunch. There are Christians, there are Muslims, there are atheists, there are people of all sorts of political persuasion. It's a country which is incredibly well educated. 80% of women, believe it or not, go on to get the equivalent of A-levels. I wish we could achieve the same amount of educational attainment in this country. It's a very extraordinary country where people have suffered, but they have also shown a great deal of resilience, and all they say is, when you say to them, do you believe in 1 state, 2 states, they say, we don't really care, we just want to get on with our lives. That's what they want, is the possibility of living an ordinary life, making themselves prosperous and growing their economy and their society. And the Palestinians want the ordinary life that we take for granted. So what I'm going to ask us to do now, first of all, just an announcement, in that next Saturday, if the war is still continuing, there's going to be another demonstration in London. So if you want to go on that, please check the Swindon Stop the War website for details of any transport. And what I'm going to ask now is 2 minutes silence, and then we will disperse. This is 2 minutes silence for all the dead of the conflict on both sides.